Thank you so much, Lisa. I so appreciate that. I know that was a last minute request and you did it beautifully. I especially wanted this song because the feeling of dancers in the light and dreaming. I first heard this song in the early 80s when we were in the San Diego area. It was written by Charley Thweatt, who used to travel around to various New Thought churches and perform his music. And I'd lost track of him. But during the pandemic, somehow I realized that he was doing a concert. I don't know where I got the message or how it came to me at this time, but I do know that I signed up to attend the concert, um, because I just love listening to his cassette tapes. Remember when we listened to cassette tapes? Well, I listened to the CDs. I listened to the tapes. And when I did that, it'd been such a long time since I listened to them. And he sent me the CDs. He sent me CDs to replace my cassette tapes. And he sent a nice note with it and said, oh, that he had played at the Austin church way back when Reverend Rainbow was the minister. And so I wrote back and I said, well, Reverend Rainbow is our minister again. And then as I thought about this song, I thought, I want to know if Lisa can play this. So I asked him for the sheet music. And he sent back a note, and it was very sweet. This is what he said. He said, enjoy using the song. You might also enjoy knowing that I wrote it in Austin. Cool, huh? He continues, I was rearranging chairs before a Sunday service at Unity in the Oaks on Del Curto in South Austin on January 3rd, 1981, when it came flowing into my mind. What a gift. I was so moved by that communication with Charley. And it brought up so many emotions. It brought up the feelings of thinking about this young man in 1981, the song coming through him, this Dancers in the Light. And just so many things came up for me. And emotions are funny like that. Sometimes they just show up, a whole range of them. And perhaps today you are feeling something too. So today we're going to talk about what emotions are on your spice rack because they add the spice to life. They add the flavor, the aroma, the delicacy to the enjoyment of life. And sometimes they're subtle and barely perceptible. A mild spice, maybe like cumin, or they may be right out of the front, like red chili flakes. So this is in line with our yearly and monthly theme. Our yearly theme, living everyday wonder, and our monthly theme for May, emotion. And today specifically, what's on your spice rack? So we know that there's a vast variety of emotions that add spice to our human mix. And as we lean into learning from emotions and creating balance, our recipe is perfected with just that right blend to create a mixture of harmony, well-being, growth. And I am blessed and grateful for my emotions. See, our emotions are amazing resources that help us learn more about ourselves. And they can provide lots of information. One day last week, I was on my way home and ready to change into the lane that I need to turn. And somebody came from the other side and turned into that lane. And I screamed at that driver. Now, usually I do talk to the other drivers. I encourage them. I say, okay, honey, you can pull out now. Or, oh, wait just a minute. But I screamed at this person from the bottom of my lungs. And I thought, oh, what is going on in my life that would bring that up? So through that, they're a guide and a processing center for reflection, exploration, growth. And there's so many to choose from. There's so many ways that we name emotions. And being human, emotions are our default within our central response center. Yesterday, I was listening to the podcast on Hidden Brain with Shankar Vedantam. It's on PBS, it's on KUT, usually on Sundays and Saturdays. And it's really interesting. He's talking about how Anger, that red hot anger can just take over and make you do things you don't even know you've done until after it's over. And there's a lot that we don't know about emotion. But there's emotions we deal with every day. There's so many types of emotions with varying levels of degree and intensity. And so thinking about these emotions as a spice rack that we can draw from, maybe we can find the right emotion for this perfect seasoning at this time. Oh, speaking of spice racks, do you know what Charles Dickens keeps in his spice rack? You got it. The best of times, the worst of times. One April Fool's, I decided to switch around the labels on my spice rack. So Rob didn't know it, but the time's a coming. So all emotions are beneficial, and we just have to use them in the right places. Like, well, some people do use cinnamon in chili, but more likely we're going to use chili powder in chili. So all of our emotions are beneficial and have lessons to offer. And we think about these emotions like we saw in the little video as entities and exploring these emotions, some emotions, joy, anger, fear, sadness. In the movie we saw disgust. Gosh, there's so many emotions that we don't even name, and they're differing degrees. So this month we're going to talk about 4 key emotions: fear, happiness, anger, sadness. And we're going to explore those emotions together and lean into learning about our emotions for greater understanding on how critical they are to our growth, development, and well being. So rather than shutting them down or running from a difficult emotion, let's face it with curiosity, wonderment, and look for the blessing in that. Look for what it's trying to tell us, what we can gain from that. So I'm taking a class right now where we talked about turning fear into curiosity and conflict into a call for connection. So as you heard in the reading that Jean did, as we explore our emotions and feelings, we focus on the mental equivalent to gain a different perspective. So we don't pray it away through something we would call spiritual bypass, because it may return if it's not processed. Instead, we apply our spiritual practice to walk through it, to breathe through it, and find a way to face those scary monsters that may not be so scary after all. Well, especially if you watch Monsters, Inc., you would know that. Another Disney Pixar. So I guess I get a lot from that movie. We may even realize a misconception or a false narrative trying to appear real. Remember, you know, fear, false emotions appearing real. We may realize that we're trying to assign meaning to something erroneously. Like when that driver pulled out in my lane, he wasn't really trying to do anything to me. He was just trying to get where he was going. And so as we look at that, the truth actually presents itself in a way that we wouldn't have if we didn't delve into that emotion. So in emotions, we come to a balance so that we don't spiral downward into a dark abyss or become oversaturated with bliss that we sometimes call manic, where the reality is not present. So a lot of us are taught, I was during our childhood, to shut down our emotions and therefore hide or run from them. And often you'll see that people have been taught not to cry or express their emotions outwardly, and that shuts down a very important human feeling center. And sometimes we're trained that certain emotions are bad, other emotions are good. Certainly, we want you all to feel joy all of the time. But if we label emotions are bad or good, then this causes us to maybe berate ourselves when we experience normal emotions that occur, or when we overly bask in certain emotions to the exclusion of others. This is how hidden beliefs develop. And these hidden beliefs sabotage our heart's desires. See, sometimes we have to figure these things out and not run from emotions necessarily, but we have to know what to do. Okay, so here's the situation. You're riding a horse full speed. You're being chased by a lion, and there's a giraffe in the way in front of you. So how do you escape this highly dangerous situation? My advice, get off the carousel. So by facing our emotions and looking underneath them, we learn how these hidden beliefs originated. And we can do that healing work that's necessary for us to process them instead of running from them, hiding from them, ignoring them. So as we embrace these emotions, we uncover maybe something very uncomfortable. And in that, we can then use our tools. We can forgive, we can show compassion, and we can love ourselves and others to just help this heal. And then the tough times become times of learning. And so we no longer need to run or hide from the pain. We move into welcoming it so that we can move on and be free, be that openness. But looking at a painful emotion means looking at it directly in the face and seeing what it has to say. This hasn't always been easy for me. This requires courage, humility, strength, and it can be a tough exercise. And that's why our spiritual practice is so important, because it provides us support. Because we know when we're connected, that practice of meditation, that practice of treatment, that practice of affirmation, that practice of study, when we know we're connected, then we can move through it. If we have a mantra that helps us, working with a practitioner or prayer partner is helpful. And then we can learn from that. See, that deep intuitive listening can serve as a guide for exploring areas in the emotional spectrum. Our inner guide knows where these treasures of learning and growth are and serves as a compass for that access. And the places to probe, where you want to poke the lion, is where you find that inner resistance. I think about it as when you're getting a massage and something that has been out of whack hurts as part of the massage, but they're breaking out the knot. So our journey can uncover additional work that needs to be done and support us in what's needed to do that work. In the end, this cleaning out and discovery process yields a healthier, happier you. And then we can be Zen-like. We can just be in the zone. Which reminds me, green beans are the most Zen of all the vegetables because they found their inner peace. So let's think about a journey with our inner guide. And let's just take a moment to do that, to say, I have an inner guide, and I welcome that inner guide to come forward now. And I know that guidance is within me all of the time in every way. And so I take a moment, just a moment, to focus on an area where there might be some discomfort. And as I connect with that inner guidance, that intuition that's always there, I ask, what's this about? What might I need to do? What might I need to listen to? What might I need to be aware of to shift this, to shift this discomfort, perhaps to curiosity, perhaps to connection, perhaps to hope. What is it I need to do to shift this discomfort? And that inner guidance is always present. And it may provide the answer immediately, or it may work out the answer and provide it to you in the next few days. And so, what I know about that is that it always comes through. And sometimes, okay, sometimes I'll be honest, I don't always like the answer, but there always is that. And so, if we create balance and harmony in our emotions, we can add to our life. So joy, we're constantly working through our emotional processing center based on what's going on in our lives and in the world. We usually experience just a whole variety of emotions all at the same time. And when there's balance on the emotional spectrum, then all is well. And when the emotions are skewed, either extreme, then we get disharmony, imbalance, and too much joy and bliss could cause overexcitement, anxiety, or simply too much stimulation. And so it's good to balance this. And just given the extreme local, national, global events and circumstances over the past couple of years, some of us have been on this hyperdrive emotionally, and it's a constant effort to work through the opportunities to learn and to gain. And our spiritual practices, again, that's the way out. That's the way through. Stay grounded and process the constant emotional swings of life until they no longer can get you off course. So, from a spiritual perspective, the way to overcome fear is through faith. And faith is the mental equivalent of fear at the opposite end of the spectrum. And so, whenever we want to change something, we look at what is the mental equivalent. Faith overcomes fear, love overcomes hate, joy will replace sadness. And the way to happiness is through gratitude. So even the smallest miracle and blessing, we find joy in that and look to the unexpected. We've all heard fake it till you make it and act as though it already is. And these are turning points. So we turn to what we want to accomplish, not necessarily what's happening in this moment. And this is the mental equivalent that generally, eventually comes to pass. So there was a big dog, saw a puppy chasing its tail and asked, "Why are you chasing your tail that way?" And the little dog says, "Well, I have studied philosophy and solved the problem of the universe, which no other dog before me has solved." And the puppy continues, "And I have found out that the best thing for a dog in life is happiness, and that my happiness is in my tail, and that's why I'm chasing it. And when I catch it, I will reach happiness." "Son," the older dog says, "in my young days, I was also interested in the questions of the universe. I also thought that happiness is in the tail. And in the beginning, I was also chasing it. But later, I noticed that wherever I go and whatever I do, the tail was following behind me. And then I understood that I don't need to chase it. I don't need to chase happiness. It's already following me. And so I simply turn around and turn toward it." So many things in our life can be looked at differently. For example, anger, or when we're feeling anger, we may need to disengage or take a time out, put ourselves in the corner, as it were, before we do something or say something we might later regret and that we really don't feel anyhow at the time. Um, And so I just imagine you're walking along a sidewalk with your arms full of groceries, and someone roughly bumps you. So maybe you fall, and your groceries are strewn all over the ground. And as you rise up from the puddle of broken eggs and tomato juice and whatever it happens to be, you're ready to just shout out, "You idiot! What's wrong with you? Are you blind?" Well, just before you can catch your breath to speak, you see the person who bumped into you actually is. Think about the change in emotion that brings. And especially when you see that that person is also in the middle of spilled groceries. And just imagine that how your anger just vanishes in an instant and replaced by that sympathy, that concern. Are you hurt? Can I help you? And so our situations are like that. We don't really know what's going on. And when we clearly realize the source of disharmony and misery in the world is that ignorance, is that not knowing, then we open the door to wisdom and compassion. See, in anger, in fear, in whatever it is, we can always focus on the eye of the storm where there's peace and calm. And this calm helps us to diffuse the heat of the situation. And by focusing on the calm in the midst of that storm, we can allow the waves to crash around us and turn our attention to what we want to experience instead. That calm, that peace, that serenity. And then things begin to slow down and things clear out. And from the calmer place, the harmony is the result. And we can find the peace, the tranquility, and serenity instead of whatever agitation and frustration we were going through. And so all of these emotions are on our spice rack, and it's up to us to choose which one we're going to use at any given time. It's up to us to replace that sadness with memories of joy. It's up to us to replace that anger with understanding and compassion. It's up to us to, instead of taking that sour fear from the shelf, to take the sweetness of allspice. It's up to us to choose the spice that we're going to use. And like anything in life, practice makes perfect. So as we practice and maintain that emotional health and balance in our lives, ah, that is where we want to be. Staying aware of our thoughts, moods, disposition, that's a healthy practice. And creating balance in our activities, that helps us stay balanced. Exercise, rest, positive engagement with others, deep self-care, spiritual practice. Did I mention spiritual practice again? An activity that serves to support our balance. So our mixture is too spicy. Well, that's not necessarily going to work. Some of us like and are addicted to that hot stuff, though. By paying attention to the signals and signs of what may be seeking our attention, we can take timely action where it's needed. So staying healthy in any area of our lives requires effort, including our emotional response center. So being human, we're always in process, and that requires our ongoing attention. Keeping our emotional center healthy takes awareness, courage, compassion. And so I just want to leave you with this thought. Do you know what you call someone with experience in spices? A seasoned veteran. So let us just now be a veteran of our spiritual practice. Let us go into that spiritual mind tree, knowing that there is only one power, one presence, one infinite source, one divine mind. That's all there is. One. There is no beginning to that. There is no end to that. There is no beginning to us. There's no end to us. We are all in that one. And it is everything that it is created, everything out of itself. All of the spices have been created out of that one power and presence. We're connected in that. And in this connection, there is joy, there is love, there is light, there is faith, there is peace. And so whenever it is that we feel emotions that seem unlike that, it is just the other end of that continuum. And so we move toward that love, toward that peace, toward that light, toward that joy with each step. And we shift our awareness. We take a different spice from the spice rack. What would happen if we added some cinnamon here? What would happen if we pepped it up with a little nutmeg? What would happen if we wisened up with sage? So right now, what I know is that this divine power and presence in each and every person is that wisdom that we draw on. It is that inner guidance that provides us the message, the way. It provides us with the truth of our own being. And it provides that spice of life. And so knowing love, peace, understanding, prosperity is the nature of our being. I just give thanks. I'm in gratitude for everything that is. And I am in gratitude for everything that is not. Because I know the perfection of this moment, of this time. And I can rest in that knowing that all is well, that everything is in perfect and divine right order, and that there is nothing that can stand in the way of that divine spirit moving in communion, in love, in light, in joy. And so knowing that the peace is all there is, love is all there is, God is all there is, I let it be. I invite you to join me in affirming this, in knowing this, by saying together, and so it is.